All right, I'm going to show you how you can use Filezilla as your SFTP solution. So for this tutorial, we're going to connect to the Media Arts and Technology server at MiraCosta College. It's the MAT server. So you're going to download Filezilla client. Okay, make sure that's not the server version, but the client version. Install it, and when you open it on Windows or Mac, it's going to look like this. And so the first thing I would recommend that you do is you can go up here to File and Site Manager, and it's going to look like this, with one exception. I already have some things stored, and so I have it stored in a folder called Lease Sites. You're not going to have something that looks like that. You'll just have something that says My Sites. So you'll select My Sites, and you'll click on New Site, and we're going to name this MAT server MiraCosta College. Okay, and what you want to do next over here on the right side of this panel is you want to select the protocol first, and you're going to choose SFTP. That's very important. If you leave it on FTP, it will never work. So choose SFTP. That stands for Secure FTP, Secure File Transfer Protocol. Okay, and then the host is going to be mat.miracosta.edu. The port number has to be 22, otherwise SFTP will not work. You can leave the logon type as normal. And for your user, you're going to type in your W number. I have something that looks a little different. Mine is that user, but yours is going to be your W number, and then you're going to type in your password, which I'll go ahead and do right here, right now. Okay, and I'm just going to leave the rest of this available, and then we'll go ahead and say connect. And it's going to connect as soon as it does its handshake, and you can see up here in the top window, this is a log that shows you what is happening. And this is actually very important, because if you have any problems connecting, then you can look at this log, you can copy the log, and you can send it to the student help desk so that they can help you understand why you can't connect. Furthermore, they can actually help resolve that if it's a problem on their end, and that does happen sometimes, maybe if there's a permission hiccup. Okay, so what we're looking at now is we are looking at this top window. This is the log, and on the left side, which is here where it says local site, I'm on a Mac, and so I have a / which shows that I'm at the root of my computer. Yours might start in a different place. It might start on the desktop or in the user folder or something like that. If you're on Windows, the top level of your computer is typically your C drive, unless you're on some special system that you set up and it's not using the C drive, but typically it's going to be the C drive. And whether you're on a Mac or Windows, to drill down to the user on your computer, you would look under the main site, whether it's this / root directory or on a Mac or the C drive on Windows, and you're going to look for a folder that's called users, and you can open that up. And then you're going to find your username and select it. And you'll notice that every time I click something in this sort of top left directory panel, that the context of the bottom panel on the left changes. That's because what it's doing is, as I click on new folders, each time it's showing the contents down below it in this panel, right? It's showing the contents. So I'm going to open up my user panel, and I've got a bunch of hidden files, so don't worry about that if you don't see all this crazy stuff. That's what these are. It's like the little dot in front. That means it's a hidden file that you don't normally see in your operating system. So I'm going to go into my user file or user folder, and then I'm going to find the desktop. And if I click on that, you see it changed. Once again, it changed to show what the contents of this was. All right. Now, this is the thing about Filezilla, because it is a pretty professional, even though it's free, it's a pretty professional level FTP software. It actually is going to show a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't normally see. So if you see anything with a dot in front of it, that means it's hidden. So if you were to look at my desktop, you see all I've got is this thing called test file, and I've got a folder called stuff. And then this hard drive is just a shortcut to my hard drive. All right, but here in Filezilla, you can see that it's showing me the stuff folder, but it's also showing me a hidden folder, some hidden files. That's what these are. There's my test file. And then it's got these other things. These are temp files that haven't been purged yet. All right, so if you see something that starts with a tilde or a dot, don't worry about it, just try to ignore it. Anyway, so if you go here to your left side, you find something on your desktop, or you can go like to documents or something, right? That's fine. But if you go to desktop, that's where I've got a file. I'm going to use this test file, and I'm going to put that up on the server. So how do I do that? If I look over here on the right side where it says remote site, okay, like up here, you see that it also starts at the root level, and it's always going to be a / because it's showing the root level of the web folder that you have access to. Now, if I click on web here, what it does is it goes and it shows me the contents of all of the folders that are on this server for the website, for the web service, okay? And you're not going to have access to every single thing that's on there, but what you'll do is you'll find the class that you're looking for. And so you would first start with the word mat and then whatever that number is. Typically that's how it goes. And then you look for the instructor's last name. And so let's just use mine as an example. You could be using this for any other instructor too. Let's use mine as an example, and we'll use my Mat 120 class. So if we look for Mat 120 _ Kotner, I can double click this, and you'll notice, see up here, this is where people sometimes will get confused. I told you before on the local side, I was showing you how to use this, and then I skipped down here. Well, you can use either one. It really doesn't matter. It's really whatever is easiest for you. But if I click on Mat 120 Kotner, you see now if I click on it up in this top panel, it will show me in this bottom right panel, it shows me the contents of that folder, right? And so, but at the same time, you can see inside of Mat 120 Kotner, I've got some different folders. I could either choose the folder from up here, right? I could choose like student resources, for instance, and it changes it. Or if I go back, I could also come down here and I can double click, and let's go in like student work. I can double click that and it will traverse it and go down down into that folder that way too. All right, so you can use it a couple of different ways. Now, this is a less intuitive software than say something like CyberDuck, where you can just drag and drop really easily either direction, either from the server or to the server from like your desktop or something. Filezilla is a little less intuitive, but I will say this about it, it's way more reliable. Some of the things that students have become incredibly frustrated over the years of me showing them how to use CyberDuck for the sake of an easier interface all disappears whenever they get frustrated because it times out and they don't know it, and it doesn't always transfer the files well. It doesn't, deal with the connection properly. I've never had a problem like that with Filezilla. It always works really well. Okay, so anyway, what you're going to be looking for in any of these folders, like this folder, this Mat 120 Kotner folder, it has a bunch of folders that maybe some of your other classes won't have. Mine has an archive in there. It has an instructor folder. Maybe yours will have an instructor folder, maybe it won't. Mine, I added a student resources folder. You don't have to worry about all those. The one that you really want to pay attention to is you want to pay attention to this student work folder. If you click on student work, you will see more than just this one folder. Right now, it's before the semester started, and I don't have a list of names populating on the screen. So instead, I created something that is the equivalent of what you would find, which is your last name _ and then your first name. And so that is the directory that you have access to read and write to. All right, so if you go into that directory, you can see that it's empty. There's nothing in there. Now, here's what I can do. Let's say that let's say that the stuff I want to put up onto the server is sitting right here. Like, say I want to put this little test file up there. I can drag it and I can drop it straight from my desktop directly up to the server folder that I want it to go in. That worked just fine. No problem. let's say that I open this file up. Let's say that I make a change to it. There we go. I'll save that, close it. If I want to go up there and change it and overwrite it, I can do this and drop it again, and then it's going to pop up and it's going to say, hey, this file already exists. What do you want to do? Well, the default is to overwrite it. You see this radio button that says overwrite. So I'm going to go ahead and say overwrite. Now, if you were trying to overwrite a whole bunch of files, including like if you dropped a folder up there and there were lots of different things inside the folder, then you might want to go ahead and click on always use this action and then maybe apply to uploads only or apply to current queue only or something like that. I'm not going to mess with that right now. It doesn't really matter. I'm overwriting one file. But if you don't want it to constantly stop and ask you what to do every single time, you can tell it to always use a certain action. Okay, and then you can figure out these other things too about whether if it's newer or whatever. Okay, so I'm just going to say overwrite. Okay, and then it did it. It didn't, you know, open the file or anything like that. It just did it. Now, one thing that you can't do, a lot of times students will try to do this in FTP software as if it's a file system, is they'll take this and they'll double click it and try to open it. Well, you can't do that. You have to actually download the file. So let's just do something really quickly. I'm going to, on the server, I'm going to change this test file so that it's called test file 2. Okay, and what I want to show you with Filezilla that is a little bit confusing, but I want you to be aware of it, is if I take this file and try to drag it to my desktop, it doesn't work, right? And that I find that to be a little bit frustrating, and that's why sometimes I won't. In past, I hadn't shown people how to use this software because you can do it one way but not the other, and that's not intuitive in my opinion. However, this is a really reliable, free FTP software. So anyway, I just want you to be aware of that. You're not doing anything wrong if you try to download straight to your interface. What you have to do if you want to download something from the server through FTP is you need to go and do it like this. You would have to go on this left panel in your local site directory, and you have to find the directory that you want to drop it in, and then you would drag it and you would drop it over here like that. And then you can see down here it tells you what the status is, and now I've got test file 2. I can take a look at that. Works fine. Okay, now so let's say I've got my stuff up there and I want to be able to see it on the internet. Okay, let's take a look. If you are in a class where web directories are enabled, then you'll be able to do this. If you're in a class where web directories are not enabled, then you won't be able to do this. I typically have all of my classes enabled for web directories. Some other people don't. So if you're in a different class and you're trying to do this, it may or may not work. Let's go and open a web browser. Okay. Now what I want to show you, this is actually pretty important, that's a little bit confusing to some people at first, is when I'm using FTP, that is a certain kind of protocol. It's file transfer protocol. When I'm using the web, it's using a different protocol. It uses the HTTPS or hypertext transfer protocol. Service protocol. Okay, so you're using a web protocol when you use a web browser, and you're using a file transfer protocol when you're using FTP software. Okay, so that's why some of the addressing is going to look slightly different. So whenever you're in FTP, what you're doing is you're looking at the server's actual file pathway. Okay, and the web serving folder that is available for the MAT server is this one here called /web. Okay, now if we wanted to look at it on the web, however, we wouldn't type the word web. What we would do is we would type the domain name mat.miracosta.edu, and then we would type the address of mat120_Kotner, C-O-T-N-O-I-R. Okay. And because I have web directories services turned on, what happens is it gives me a listing here, and I can just click and go to student work, and I can go inside last name, first name, and there's my file. And because this file is not something that is web readable, it's going to ask me if I want to download it or what am I supposed to do with it? Okay, I don't actually want to download this file. What is interesting is that a web browser can read text files. So this is a rich text file, but if I were to change this, let's open this and let's change this file to a plain text file. Okay, and now I'm stripping away all formatting, and you see that the file extension is now going to be txt. So I'm going to save that, and we will put that up here. Okay, and remember, I can drag this direction. I can drag to the server. Oops, try that again. Okay. And now if I come back to my web browser, you might come back here and go, well, I don't see it. It didn't change. Well, that's because you have to refresh the web browser page. There you go. Now that file is there, and I can click on it, and I can actually see the contents of that file. So text files will work, HTML files will work. If you were to put a JPEG image up there, it would work as well. In fact, let's look at that. So I went ahead and I made this this picture off to the right here. Let me get Firefox out of the way. So I made this picture of flowers.jpg, and I throw it up here, and there's flowers.jpg. So if I go back to Firefox and I hit the refresh button again, now I've got flowers.jpg, and if I click on it, I can look at it. That's going to be true of MP4 files. So it'll play the movie. It'll be true of like WAV files and certain kinds of audio formats, MP3s, things like that. So this is one thing that you can do, and the other thing I'm going to recommend that you always do is you keep some kind of storage. So you can create a directory, and you can call this, let's go down to the very end where it says new directory, and I'll change that to, I don't know, folder 1. All right, maybe let's pretend like it's something that's for a project. We'll say that's project 1. All right, and so then what I can do is I can take these files and I can move them into project 1. So you can see that it is possible for me to store files that aren't web readable on this, but what it'll do is it'll just prompt me to download anything that's not web readable. But that's one of the ways that you can put your stuff up there. You can see what your resources are. You can share your resources with other people that way. And when you're finished, you can just disconnect, and then you'll be able to use this quick connect in the future now that we've got that site made. Or you can also just go up to File and then go to your site manager, and you can use your stored connection if it's on your own computer. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.